Roblox snippets. If you want to learn how to create a simple button in a GUI and use remote events to trigger sales on the server, keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to do it. We'll begin by creating the button that the player will click. So come over to the Explorer window and left click on Start a GUI, and next to that click the plus button, and we're going to choose Screen GUI. So a Screen GUI appears here and we can put elements inside of it, but we'll rename our Screen GUI to be Game GUI as such. Once we have our Game GUI, left click on the plus button next to it and we're going to choose Text Button, and it should appear up in the top left of the screen. So we'll fancy our button up a little bit by changing some of its properties. So we'll left click on it and change its name for a start to be Buy Button, as this button will let us buy stuff. Alright, so there's a few things that we can do. If we look at our properties for our button, I'll just open this up a little bit. If we scroll down and we'll go through each one, the anchor point. So currently the anchor point is in the top left corner. That's why it sits in the corner. If we wanted to put it in the middle of the screen, we'd open our anchor point and we would change this to be 0.5, which is half, and 0.5 in the y-axis. And now the middle of the button is up in this corner. If we scroll down again, we can change the background color of our button to something that you like. So I'll just pick a blue type color over here and click OK. And moving down further, let's change our border color as well. Let me see, border color, and I think we'll make it quite bright, and I'll make it red. And I'll also change the pixel size up to say 5 to make it stand out, and we'll leave it at outline, so you can play around with those settings as much as you like. Alright, so we can see this a little bit better. Let's change the position. So our position, we'll use scale so that it appears correctly on all devices, and we'll set it in the middle of the screen. So let's change this to be 0.5, which is in the middle on the X, and down in the Y we'll change the scale to be 0.5 down the bottom here as well. Alright, scrolling down a little bit further still, we'll come down and have a look at our font. So you can change the font up here to be whatever you like. I'll just leave it as it is for now, and let's change the button text, and we're going to say buy stuff, and we'll put the price in here as well. Okay, so we'll say 10 gold. That's going to be our currency in the game. And make it stand out a little bit better, we'll change the text color. So click on that and we'll move it over to be say a bit of a yellow type color. I think will work okay. And then change the size of the text. We'll just scroll it up till it looks about right in here. If you wanted it to stand out a little bit more, you could come up and click on bold here as well. Now we have a button that is able to be clicked by the player, and we can move on to adding scripts to make everything work together. So we'll add our scripts first and then we'll code them. So in the buy button itself, if you left click on the buy button, we're going to add a local script to this. So click on in and add local script, and we'll change this to be buy button local, so we know it's a local script. Then up in the server script service, we'll add a script, and we'll call this our main script, where we can create some variables for the player. And we'll also have a separate, in the server script service, a separate script, and we'll call this our shop script. The last thing that we need to do, as we're talking about remote events, is to add one in. So the place that we'll do that is in replicated storage. So if you left click on replicated storage and click on the plus button, you should find in the list the remote event here. So if you don't find that, In the search box, start typing in remote event until it appears, and then you can left click on it to add it. And we'll change the name of our remote event to be the buy event. So there are all the parts that we need in our project in order to make this work. So the first thing that we'll look at is to create some variables for the player. So left click on your main script at the top, and we'll get rid of our hello world, and we'll add these lines in. So game.players.player added, and we'll connect a function to this, pass player in as an argument, and we'll also get the character. So we'll say, although it's not really necessary for this project, but we'll put it in anyway, player.character, and we'll just use character added, connect, and a function, and pass in the character. So inside here we'll create our leader stats that will show our players their gold. So local leader stats will equal instance.new, and we're going to create a folder, and this folder will be parented to the player. Alright, so you could put leaderstats.parent and then put player here, but this is a shortened way of doing it. And we need to name our leader stats folder. So this is a special string here in Roblox Studio, and in order for it to work, this has to be exactly that name in here for the name of the folder. You could call this player stats over here if you like, but this particular string here needs to be called leader stats in order for it to work. So now we'll add a value to our leader stats folder. So we'll say player gold will equal instance.new, and we'll use a number value to represent our gold, and we want to parent this to our leader stats folder. Right, I'll get rid of these extra windows so you can see what's going on clearly. Right, and now we can say player gold, and we'll give it a name, and we'll simply call this gold as it'll appear on the screen. And player gold.value, and we'll give the player 50 gold for this example. So this will now display 50 gold on the screen for our players to use. And we're finished with our main script, so if you've got everything looking like that, then we can close that script. Alright, the next thing that we'll look at is our shop script. So our shop script will handle when the player clicks on the button, and it will check to see if the player has enough gold in order to make a purchase. So we'll create a couple of variables up the top. Now, as I said before, we're using a remote event from when the button is clicked. So if I open up my Explorer window here, you'll see that we have our buy event in here, our remote event. So we need to get access to the replicated storage service first. So let's create a variable for that. Local, and we'll call it repstore equals game, get service, and replicated storage. So once we have that, we can grab our buy event. So local buy event equals, and we'll say repstore, and we'll use wait for child, and the buy event should pop up. We use wait for child because sometimes things don't load in exactly the same order, and this should prevent errors. Down below this, we'll create a local function. So local function, and we'll call this our buy stuff function, and we'll just leave that empty, and right below this we will add the following line: buy event dot OnServerEvent, and then we connect, and we type in the name of the function. So note that there's no parentheses at the end of this, it's just the name of the function. And that is the very basics of making this work. And for now, we'll just put inside of here print. And we'll say player is buying stuff. Alright, and that will let us test, but that's the bare minimum for us to get things working. Alright, let's come down now to our buy local button. So if you've got that script open, and we'll open that up. Now, the buy local button will also need access to the same service, replicated storage, and the buy event. So we can actually just grab these first two lines here and copy those, and then come back to our local script and we'll paste them in up the top. We'll need to create a variable for the button itself, so we can say local button equals script.parent, and then we'll create an event for when the button is pressed. So button, mouse button, one click, and then we will connect a function to this. So parentheses, just move over one and hit enter. And we simply need to add one line, which will be buy event, and then a colon, and we say FireServer. Now, you'll notice that there's nothing in here to suggest what the player is, but this is the bare minimum that we need to get our function to work. Come back over to our shop script, and in our buy stuff here, we're going to add in the player as an argument. So by default, in the local scripts, when you use FireServer, it's an invisible argument that or a parameter that is passed through to the function of the player. So that's always the first item in here, even if you pass through anything else. So instead of play here now, we could change this to be, and just put in here, we could say player.name, okay, and then just a comma, and we'll see how that works. So let's open up our output window down the bottom here, and we'll click on File and Save, and let's play, and we'll test what we've got so far. Right, so with the game up and running, we have our button on the screen, we have 50 gold, and if I move over the button and I left click on it, you'll see it says Crazy Bill the Farmer is buying stuff. So our function is working correctly. Now we can stop the game, and we'll come back and finish off the contents of our function. Right, I'll close these windows so we can see clearly. And we don't need this line in here now that we know that this is working correctly. So we'll get rid of that. Now, as we're buying stuff, then we said in our GUI here that it was going to be 10 gold. All right, so we'll create a variable up the top here to represent that. So cost local, and we'll say cost of item, and we'll say 10 gold. All right. Now, there's ways that we could change the price using this variable, but this is really just demonstrating our remote events at the moment. All right, inside of our buy function now, we want to get access to our leader stats folder. So if you remember, we created that. So local, and we'll call this p stats, and it will be player that we passed in, and we'll say wait for child and leader stats. And the variable that we want to make use of inside of that will be p gold will equal p stats, and we can simply put a dot and then gold to get access to that variable. Now, to control our script, we'll add a debounce value up the top, so db equals true, and now we'll construct a conditional statement. So if player gold dot value is greater than or equal to the cost of item and db, then let player buy stuff as they've got enough gold. So we'll start off by setting db to false, and as they are buying something, we will take the amount of gold off their value. So player gold dot value minus equals the cost of item, so that will take that off their gold. And we'll just put in here print to let us know we've bought something. Yay, I bought some stuff. Right, now just below this we'll put in an else if, and we'll say if player gold dot value is less than the cost of item and DB, then we'll give them a warning message, and we'll say you don't have enough gold to buy this. And the last thing that we want to do is reset our DB, and we're going to do that down the bottom here each time the function runs by saying task.wait and say a second DB equals true. Alright, so if they successfully manage to buy something, then they have to wait a second before they can buy anything else. Alright, so that completes all of our coding. Let's click on File and Save, and we'll open up our output window and let's run the game. Alright, I'm all loaded in, so you should be able to now come up to the Buy Stuff button, and when you click it, you'll see that our gold went down by 10, and I've got a message, and I can continue to do that. We've got 30, 20, 10, down to 0, and then when they run out of money, we get the warning. So everything is working just as we expected. If you found this video useful, subscribe now. For more information about my online courses, go to mrbrendanross.com.